Hello and welcome back to my channel Qubit Educational Services. My name is Pranesh. I am a mechanical engineer and I hold a master's degree from IISc Bangalore. In this video we are going to solve the GATE XE paper 2010. We are going to solve the engineering mathematics section. So let us start. The pattern is same. There are 11 questions, 15 marks. 7 questions carry 1 mark each and the remaining 4 questions carry 2 marks each. So we are going to start with 1 mark questions. Question number 1 on Cayley-Hamilton theorem. If P is the matrix 1 1 1 1, then P to the power 8 minus 2P to the power 7 plus 2P to the power 6 minus 4P to the power 5 plus 3P to the power 4 minus 6P to the power 3 plus 2P to the power 2 equals. Okay, now clearly if you keep on finding these consecutive powers of the matrix P, it is going to take you a lot of time and you cannot afford it for a 1 mark question in GATE. Okay, so there has to be some trick to solve the problem, and you can observe this. Every time when you go to the next term, the coefficient becomes minus 2 times the previous one. Okay, so this is 1 minus 2, then 2 minus 4, then 3 minus 6. Okay, let's leave this for a moment. So there is some potential of taking some powers of the matrix P common. Okay, to begin with, what I have done is I have written down the characteristic equation of this matrix. Okay, and how do we get it quickly? Lambda squared minus the trace of the matrix, which is 1 plus 1 2, okay, plus the determinant, which is clearly 0. So this is the characteristic equation, and because the determinant is 0, you can now take lambda common and mention it as lambda into lambda minus 2 equal to 0. Okay, now observe that according to the Cayley-Hamilton theorem, every matrix is going to satisfy its characteristic equation, which means the matrix A, okay, let's call it P, because in the problem they're calling it P. So we will have P times P minus 2i equal to null matrix of order 2 or 2 matter. Okay, now what does it mean? It means that by using the properties of matrix multiplication, if we take P to the power 7 common from the first 2 terms, then P to the power 5, 2 times P to the power 5 from the third and the fourth, and 3 times P to the power 3 from the fifth and the sixth terms. Okay, then we can take P minus 2i together. Okay, and then you will have plus 2 times P squared. Alright, now because P into P minus 2i is a null matrix, this will go to 0 or null matrix, so will this and so will this. Okay, so you have to write this as P to the power 6 into P minus 2i, which is null matrix. Okay, same thing here, P to the power 4 into P minus 2i. Same thing here, P squared into P minus 2i. Excuse me. So having ruled out the first 3 terms because they are null matrices, let's now focus on this. Okay, 2p squared. Now what is 2p squared? First of all, from this again we can write p squared minus 2p equal to null matrix. Yes, which means if we want p squared, that is nothing but 2p, you have to shift this here. Yes, okay, so 2p squared has to be 4 times p, which is option D. Okay, so we've got the answer by the Cayley-Hamilton theorem, but you should also know how to find a characteristic equation quickly. Question 2. Now this is one of the very rare situations where questions based on eigenvalues and characteristic equation come twice. Okay, because even the first one was based on that. So let us solve this question, which is based on the same concept. Which one of the following matrices has the same eigenvalues as that of 1 2 4 3? And we have got 4 options. Okay, now if the matrices have same eigenvalues, they must have the same trace which is the sum of the diagonal elements, because trace is nothing but the sum of the eigenvalues but also the sum of the diagonal elements. Okay, so for our matrix the trace is 4. Okay, and if you check the options, this has trace 5, this has trace 4, 5, 7. Okay, so only option B has the trace equal to 4, hence it is option B. Okay, so we have not wasted our time in finding the eigenvalues of this matrix as well as the remaining 4 matrices in the options. Okay, what we have used is the fact that trace is actually sum of the eigenvalues but also sum of the diagonal elements of the matrix. Okay, so that was question 2. Question number 3 is based on the concept of improper integrals. Okay, but let me remind you that there are 2 kinds of improper integrals. The first kind is when the function is discontinuous at least one point in the interval of integration, and the second one is at least one of the limits is not finite. Okay, so this seems to belong to the first one. The integral -1 to 1 of the function x to the power -4/3 with respect to x. Okay, and now because this is an old paper, the font quality isn't good. Okay, so I have written it again. An improper integral converging to -6, an improper integral converging to 0, not an improper integral but has value -6, a divergent improper integral. Okay, now first of all we need to check whether it is an improper integral, and if it is, does it converge or does it diverge. Okay, so the first thing that I have done is I made use of the fact that this function that we have is an even function. Okay, so then, and because the limits are equal in magnitude but opposite in sign, it will be 2 times the same integral with limits 0 to 1 instead of -1 to +1. Okay, now see, the point is, once we integrate x to the power -4/3 by applying this formula, x to the power n plus 1 upon n plus 1, we cannot directly go for substitution with 0, isn't it? Okay, because we have this negative sign, which means it is 1 upon x to the power 4/3, which remains even after the integration. Okay, so it becomes x to the power -1 upon 3. Yes. Okay, so this is a typical improper integral problem. Okay, so this actually confirms that the function is, the integrand that we have is an improper integral. Okay, so it will be 2 times into limit as a tends to 0 plus, because 0 happens to be the left end point of the interval of integration, so from right, so positive. Okay, and then we have integrated this. Okay, so x to the power -1 upon 3 upon -1 upon 3. I've taken this -1 upon 3 in the denominator outside, so we've got it as -6 section 2. Now if we substitute 1 here, there is no problem. Okay, 1 to the power -1 upon 3 is fine. But if we substitute 0, I mean, because we can't do it, we have to now assume some other variable a as the lower limit, which tends to 0 from right. Okay, so limit as a tends to 0 plus of a to the power -1 upon 3. Now this is clearly infinity. Yes. Okay, meaning if you go closer and closer to 0 from right, the value of the term a to the power -1 upon 3 doesn't converge. Okay, so which means the integral also doesn't converge, it diverges to infinity. Yes. Okay, I mean, because you have 2 negative signs here, so positive infinity, so divergent. Okay, so what is the option? A divergent improper integral, option D. Question 4. The residue of the function f of z, which is sine to the power 4z upon z plus pi/4 to the power 3 at z equal to -pi/4 is 2, 1, -1, -2. Okay, now to solve this problem we should know what the residue theorem is, not completely but partially, and basically how we determine the residue, because there are multiple ways to determine it. Alright, so we first observe that because the index is 3 of the denominator or the power, the pole is said to be of the order 3. Okay, and therefore the residue will be 1 upon 3 minus 1 factorial or 1 upon 2 factorial into n minus 1th derivative of the remaining part of the function. Okay, so it has to be second derivative of sine to the power 4z at z equal to negative pi by 4. Yes, this is the formula. Okay, that 2 pi I is not part of the residue. Okay, that is going to be part of the integral. Okay, and because we are not integrating this function and we also don't have any path. Okay, so leave that 2 pi I part, and that is even evident from the options as well. But to confuse you, they may include I and pi in one of or many of the options. Okay, all right. 1 upon 2 factorial is 1 upon 2. Take the derivative of sine to the power 4z. Okay, 4 sine cube z into cos z. Take this 4 outside, so that will make it 2. Yes. Now apply the chain rule basically. So it will be 4 sine cube z into cos z, and now you have to find the derivative of the first derivative. Okay. So having taken that 4 outside, it then brings down to the sine cube z into cos z. Again apply product rule. Okay, so 3 sine squared z into cos z into cos z, so that makes it cos squared z plus sine cube z as it is into the derivative of the second function, which is negative sine z. Okay, now we have to substitute the value of z as negative pi by 4 everywhere. Okay, now sine of negative pi by 4. Okay, how much is it? Sine of negative pi by 4, negative 1 upon root 2, but we are going to square it. Okay, so that will be 1 by 2, and again cos of z is cos of minus pi by 4 is positive, so we are going to square it anyways, so that is going to be 1 upon 4, and due to 3 this will be 3 by 4. Okay, minus sine to the power 4z. Okay, now sine z is minus 1 upon root 2, so its fourth power will be 1 upon 4. Okay, so 3 minus 1, 2, 2 by 4 is 1 upon 2, 1 upon 2 into this 2 will be 1. So option B. Okay, a straightforward question, but it might take you some time to actually find the second derivative. Okay, so this is question 4. Let us now go to a question on binomial distribution, question 5. So you may call it a probability question as well. The variance of the number of heads resulting from 10 independent tosses of a fair coin is. Okay, so clearly here the Bernoulli trial is tossing a coin which is being performed 10 times. So n is 10 in usual notations. Yes, and because the coin is fair, both success and failure probabilities are 1 upon 2. Okay, and what we want is the variance of the number of heads. Okay, now number of heads can range from 0 to 10. Okay, and for the binomial distribution, how do we find the variance? Variance is n into p into q. This is the standard formula from your 11th and 12th mathematics. Okay, variance is npq. N is 10, p is 1 upon 2, so is q. So it is 10 by 4 or 5 by 2, option B. Okay, a very simple problem, perhaps the simplest among all 11. Let's now go to question 6. Okay, this is based on again integral calculus of single variable functions, but not the improper integral part. If the quadrature rule 0 to 3 f of x dx is alpha times f of 1 plus beta times f of 3 is exact for all polynomials of degree 2 or less, then, and we have been asked to find the values of alpha and beta. Okay, now first of all, quadrature is a word which means the process of finding area, and we very well know that the definite integral of a single variable function can be interpreted as area under a curve. Okay, fine. All polynomials of degree less than or equal to 2. So let us assume that our f of x is ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, and now I'm going to integrate this, which is a into x cubed by 3. So I've directly substituted the upper limit, which is 3. There is no need to write lower limit because it is 0 forever. Okay, plus b into x squared by 2, so 9 by 2, plus c into x, so c into 3. Okay, now what is this actually equal to? This is equal to alpha times f of 1 plus beta times f of 3. Okay, now what is f of 1? F of 1 is going to be a plus b plus c. Yes, okay, you have to write x equal to 1, and that will come here, plus beta into f of 3, so 9a plus 3b plus c. Okay, so what we now have is essentially the following: 9a plus 9 by 2b plus 3c equal to alpha plus 9 beta times a plus alpha plus 3 beta times b plus alpha plus beta times c. Okay, so what I've now done is I've just equated the coefficients of a, b and c. Okay, so I will then get alpha plus beta equal to 3. Okay, and equating the coefficients of b, we will get alpha plus 3 beta equal to 9 by 2. Okay, if you subtract, you will get 2 beta equal to 9 by 2 minus 3, okay, which will be 3 by 2. So this gives us beta as 3 by 4. Okay, and how many of the options have beta equal to 3 by 4? 2 of them. Okay, so now we go to the alpha part. Okay, so we substitute a beta equal to 3 by 4 in any one of these two. I have substituted it here. Okay, so if we do it, then if we do it, then alpha becomes 3 minus beta, which is 9 by 4. Okay, yes, so that is option 9 by 4 is option C, not A. Now let's verify whether our answer is correct. Okay, what we have to do is we have to now go to the relation that we have not yet considered. Okay, that is alpha plus 9 beta. Let me use green color, this one, this one. Okay, alpha plus 9 beta equal to 9, right? Now let's check whether that is indeed true. Alpha is 9 by 4, beta is 3 by 4. Okay, so 9 by 4 plus 9 into 3 by 4, 27 upon 4, which is 9. So we have successfully verified our option as well. Okay, fine. So a very simple question, but you should first know what quadrature means. Okay, fine. Let's now go to question 7. This is based on numerical methods, the Euler's method to solve ordinary differential equations. Okay, given that dy by dx is 1 plus y squared with y of 0 equal to 0, which one of the following is nearest to y at 0.4, computed by Euler's method with step size of 0.2. So h is 0.2 here, and we have 4 options. Okay, we will use the formula y1 equal to y naught and plus h into f of x naught y naught. Okay, y naught is 0, yes, okay, plus h into, so 0.2 into f of x naught y naught, okay, which is 1 plus y squared. But because y naught is 0, it will be 1 plus 0 squared, so this will simply be 0.2. Okay, now let's take the second iteration. So y2 will be y1 plus h into f of x1 y1. y1 is 0.2 plus h into, again you have to use y1 here. Okay, so it will be 0.2 plus 0.2 into 1 plus 0.2 squared. Alright, I mean, if you compute it, you will get 0.408. If you want, I'll do it here. 0.2 plus 0.2 into 1.04. Okay, so it will be 0.2 plus this is going to be 208 with the decimal point being sitting there. So if you add, you'll get 0.408. That is option A. Okay, I mean, nowadays of course you have on-screen calculators, so it might be a bit tougher than the old days where we had the Casio calculators. Okay, so question 7, option A. So we have now completed all 7 questions which carried 1 mark. Let's now go to 2 marks questions. Question 8 is based on limits, continuity and differentiability of single variable functions, but I would say a 12th standard level question. Let f of x be sin x upon x if x is not equal to 0 and 1 when x is equal to 0. Then f is not continuous at 0. It is continuous but not differentiable. It is differentiable and f dash of 0 is 0. It is differentiable and f dash of 0 is 1. Okay, now if you know how the graph of sin x upon x looks at or in the vicinity or in the neighborhood of 0, then you will automatically come to know that it is differentiable and the derivative is actually 0. Okay, see, the curve appears to be smooth in the vicinity of 0, except it has one discontinuity at 0, which is 1. Okay, because the limit of sin x upon x as x tends to 0 is 1. So you can actually just imagine this and say that, okay, if we draw a tangent, it will be a horizontal tangent, and any horizontal tangent means the derivative is 0 or the slope is 0, which means that the function is differentiable and the derivative is 0. Okay, but well, if you know it, then you can actually go to the next question, but let's now solve it the intended way. Okay, there is no question regarding the continuity. All of us know the formula, limit as x tends to 0 sin x upon x is 1, and this is also f of 0. Okay, so it is continuous. Now to check whether it is differentiable at x equal to 0, we will find the derivative of sin x upon x from the first principles, okay, which is f of x plus h, this part, minus f of x, this part, upon h. Okay, so this will be limit as h tends to 0 of sin h upon h minus 1 into 1 upon h. So I've taken the LCM, so I've got sin h minus h upon h square. Okay, now because this is in the 0 by 0 form, we will now apply the L'Hospital's rule. So it will be cos h minus 1 upon 2h. Yes, again you observe that this is in the 0 by 0 form, because cos 0 is 1 1 minus 1 0 upon 0. Okay, so if you again apply the rule, it will be negative sin h upon 2, yes, which is 0. So the value of the derivative is also 0, and that matches with our observation, so it is option C. Okay, not a too difficult question. Question number 9, based on partial derivatives and also Euler's theorem of homogeneous functions. Let u of x comma y be the function tan of xy into x plus y, then x da by u by da by x plus y da by u by da by y equal to something, x da by u by da by x minus y da by u by da by y equal to something, and same thing with options C and D. Okay, and if you look at the right hand sides, all of them appear identical except for the fact that we have got 1 upon 3 here and we have got 3 here. Okay, everything else is same. Now what you have to first observe is, obviously you are not going to differentiate and get the answer. If you want you can, but what I recommend is you can use, or you should use, the Euler's theorem. Okay, so to do it, first we have to check whether we can apply it directly. We've got the function u, which is tan of xy into x plus y, so open the bracket, so it will be x squared y plus xy squared, and this is a homogeneous function. Okay, so I'm going to call it z. Okay, now if z is a homogeneous function of degree 3, you can apply the Euler's theorem on it. Okay, so z is tan inverse of u, and if we call this as f of u, okay, then we have the deduction of Euler's theorem, which says that x da by u by da by x plus y da by u by da by y is actually 3 times f of u upon f dash of u. And how did this 3 come? This 3 comes from the fact that the degree of our homogeneous function is 3. Okay, let me again tell you, Euler's theorem applies only to homogeneous functions. Okay, which says x da by z by da by x plus y da by z by da by y equal to nz. Okay, and we know that z is a homogeneous function, but we are not interested in applying the Euler's theorem on z, we are interested in applying it on u. Okay, so you can use this deduction which I have written here. It is n into f of u upon f dash of u, provided z is a homogeneous function of x and y, but at the same time it is a function of the new variable u. Okay, only then you can apply the theorem on u. You can refer any standard textbook, for example B.S. Grewal, to find this deduction as well as more information about Euler's theorem. Okay, so x da by u by da by x plus y da by u by da by y equal to 3 times f of u upon f dash of u. So by this time it should become clear to you that these negative things which are there, they need to be ruled out. So it has to be either A or C. Okay, Fine. Now what is f of u? F of u is indeed tan inverse of u, and f dash of u is 1 upon 1 plus u squared, derivative of tan inverse. Okay. Now we are not happy with u because we want x and y because they are present in the options. Okay. Now check this, send this 1 upon 1 plus u squared in the denominator to the numerator into tan inverse of u. Okay. Now if u is equal to tan z from this relation, will 1 plus u squared not be equal to sec squared z? Of course it will be. Okay, so 1 plus tan squared z is sec squared z, and tan inverse of u, you have to keep it as it is, which is z itself, isn't it? But what is z? Z is x squared y and plus xy squared. Yes, and again we have got this as sec squared xy into x plus y. Okay, and everything is present which is there in the options except for this number 3. Okay, and because we have 1 upon 3 in option A, we will select option C, which has 3 there. Okay, so option C. See, so what can we learn from this question? We learn from this question that just by knowing the techniques of partial differentiation is not enough. Okay, you will get the answer, but that is going to take you a lot of time. If you know the Euler's theorem, you can just write the deduction and get the answer. And by even deciding that the degree is 3, looking at that, you can select the option appropriately. Okay, so question 9, option C. Question 10 is again based on ordinary differential equations of higher order. Okay, but a slightly different question, or I would say I have solved it in a different way. Which one of the following is a particular solution or particular integral of the ordinary differential equation x d2y by dx squared minus dy by dx equal to 2x squared into f of x? And we have got 4 options, A, B, C, D, as usual. Okay, all of them involve x into f of x and, well, some other integral involving f, right? Yes. So what I did is this: I first multiplied the differential equation by x. And why did I do that? Okay, because if I multiply both sides by x, then the coefficient of d2y by dx squared becomes x squared. Okay, and the coefficient of dy by dx becomes negative x dy by dx, and there is no y term. And of course the right hand side does become 2x cubed, but that's fine. So this is now Euler's differential equation, isn't it? Because the right hand side, every derivative is accompanied by the power of x, which is equal to the order of the derivative. Alright, now because we have x cubed here, I chose f of x to be 1 upon x cubed. There is absolutely no restriction in choosing 1 upon f of x, because this applies to any integrable function f of x, and we very well know that 1 upon x cube is integrable, excluding 0, but let's just skip that. Okay, fine. So if we take f of x as 1 upon x cube, then what do we get? We get x cubed into d2y by dx squared minus x dy by dx equal to 2. Okay, see, we had got 2x cubed already by multiplying the differential equation by x. Okay, but because we chose f of x to be 1 over x cubed, it just became 2, and this is always a very easy thing to integrate. Okay, which is a constant. Now let's bring in the standard substitution. So let us assume that x is e to the power z. So, well, the rest follows. So I've called d by dz as the operator d. So x squared d2y by dx squared will become d into d minus 1. X dy by dx will simply become d on y. This will operate on y and will give you 2. Okay, we are not interested in finding the auxiliary equation and its roots. Okay, because complementary function is not asked. Okay, so it will be d to the power 2 minus 2d on y equal to 2. So yp, the particular integral, will be 1 upon d times d minus 2 operating on 2. Okay, now you have to write this 2 as 2 times e to the power 0z, which is going to help you, because now you can use the shortcut. Okay, and which says 1 upon phi of d e to the power ax equal to 1 upon phi a e to the power ax, provided phi of a is not equal to 0, which means let's leave this 1 over d as it is and let's apply it on the remaining part. Okay, so it is 1 upon d minus 2 e to the power 0z. So let a be 0, so it will be e to the power 0z upon negative 2. Okay, fine. 2 will go, so we'll have that negative sign here, and 1 upon d operating on the number 1. Now 1 upon d is nothing but integral. Okay, so this will be z. Yes, but what is z? Z is actually equal to log x. Yes, so we have got minus log x as our particular integral. Okay, now see, because we have got negative log x as our particular integral, we must have x squared into f of x as the integrand, because only then we will have the modified form of the integrand as x squared into 1 over x cubed, which will be 1 upon x, and 1 upon x when integrated produces log x. Okay, but that's not it. We should also have the negative sign because of this. Okay, so we must have minus x squared f of x as our integrand. Okay, and that is only present in option D, as you can see here. Okay, we have got plus x squared f of x, that's okay. We have got x cubed f of x here, so that is also not allowed, again and again x cubed f of x. And look at even the first terms there, x f of x not possible, f of x again not possible. Okay, so no matter what options A, C and D are, because the selection of 1 upon x cube has led us to the particular integral minus log x, options A, C and B, sorry, what was it? Yeah, it was D. Okay, so no matter what options A, C and B are, they fail to bring in negative log x as particular integral. Okay, option B may give you just log x, okay, by the integration of x squared into f of x, but it will not have this negative sign there, okay, which exists throughout our integration process. So we will select option D. Okay, fine. Now if you are worried about the first term in option D, which is the integral of f of x into x squared, let's take care of it here. Okay, integral of 1 upon x cube is going to be negative 3 times x squared. Okay, and we've got minus 3 here, and this, see, now this has led us to a constant. Okay, but because we don't have the y term in the left hand side, this shouldn't matter, or this will not matter in fact, because minus 3 is a constant. Okay, so by selecting the function as 1 upon x cube for our convenience, and by multiplying the differential equation by x, we have got the answer to question 10 as option D. Okay, fine. Let's now go to the last question, which I guess is based on partial differential equations. Yes. Which one of the following is a possible solution to the PDE dabba 2u by dabba t squared minus dabba 2u by dabba x squared equal to 0 with boundary conditions u0 t equal to 0, dabba u by dabba x at pi t equal to 0 for t greater than or equal to 0, and we have got two initial conditions as well, ux comma 0 is 0, so the initial displacement is 0 and the initial velocity is pi. Okay, now this is a typical problem. If you don't know, this is a hyperbolic partial differential equation which can be considered as a good model to one-dimensional wave equation, provided x denotes position, t denotes time and u denotes the displacement of the string. Alright, so the standard solution with which we start is c1 cos mx plus c2 sin mx into c3 cos mt plus c4 sin mt, because we don't have that c squared here, which is equal to 1 in this case, so there is no need to write, otherwise that would have come here, cos cmt plus c4 sin cmt. Okay, alright, now let us apply the condition u of x comma 0 equal to 0. So this is 0 independent of x, so we'll write this as f of x. If we let x to be 0, then this will be c3 into 1, and this is anyway 0 because sin 0 is 0. So this implies that C3 must be equal to 0, only then the product will be 0. Okay, so C3 will be 0. Now let us use the first boundary condition, u of 0 comma t equal to 0, this one. Okay, so if we use it, then c1 into 1 plus c2 into 0, and then this function will be there as it is. So u of 0 comma t is 0 for all t, which implies c1 has to be equal to 0. I mean, in a way similar to c3. Okay, and because c1 is 0, now we can write u of x comma t as c2 into c4. Okay, these two constants which currently are not equal to 0, c2 into c4 obviously, sin mx and sin mt. Okay, now you observe that out of the 4 options that we have, only the first option has both signs, isn't it? So this is enough evidence to select option A, but we are not yet complete. We would like to proceed further and indeed check whether it is n plus 1 upon 2. Okay, so to do it, we'll consider the other conditions which we have not yet used. Fine. First thing is, I'm going to call c2 into c4 as c5. Okay, and now let us apply the boundary condition da by u by da by x at pi equal to 0 for t greater than or equal to 0. First, we'll find the derivative of u with respect to x. So it will be c5 into cos mx into m, this function as it is, and at pi, when x is pi, what will this be? c5 into m into cos of m pi into sin of mt equal to 0. So this means c5 can't be 0. Okay, so can m, and also this has to, I mean, this is independent of x anyways. Okay, so it has to be cos of m pi, which leads to 0, which means m has to be any odd number, because all odd multiples of pi by 2 are 0. Okay, so it is 2n plus 1 upon 2, or yeah, n plus 1 upon 2, sorry, it shouldn't be n plus 1 upon 2, it has to be n plus 1 upon 2. Okay, and this is exactly what we have in options, in option A. Okay, n plus 1 upon 2t, n plus 1 upon 2x. Okay, and the remaining condition, that is da by u by da by t equal to pi, the initial velocity is pi, this will produce the values of the Fourier coefficients bn's, okay, if you want to call them, but that's not important. Okay, even they have not computed them, they have just written it as an. Okay, all right, so question 11, option A. So now we have solved the engineering mathematics section of the GATE XE paper 2010. I hope you understood what I explained and the techniques which I told you to solve the problems in the best possible manner. Okay, I wish you all the best for your upcoming GATE and also for your future. Thank you for watching my video, and if you think my videos are helping you, then please consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you.